Extra, blog all about it. Space Jam 20th anniversary comes and goes. 30-somethings realized the movie wasn't as good as they remembered. Newly founded Looney Tunes critic who still no one knows about tells us he told us so.
Alright, so on the off chance that you didn't notice that this video was a part 2, even though it says so right in the description, genius. And also, if you don't know what the story for Space Jam is, or even maybe if you're just really busy and don't have time to watch multiple videos that exist in parts that you may or may not have known about, allow me to recap part 1 of my Space Jam review, which, for the most part, is the story. Oh dear God, the story of Space Jam. Alright, deep breath, here we go. The evil corporate alien overlord of an animated moribund amusement park wishes to increase revenue by enslaving the Looney Tunes as attractions, but can't get them without a fight because the lackey, slug-like aliens he sends to retrieve Bugs and the gang get tricked into thinking they have to give them a fighting chance. Meanwhile, on non-animated, live-action yet cartoonishly unrealistic Earth, NBA sensation Michael Jordan, living in a suburban enclave despite being the most successful basketball player working, announces he is retiring from the game to honor his dead father who played baseball by taking up that sport instead. As all of this believable shit goes on, the aliens accept the Looney Tunes' request to play them in a basketball game first, and in secret, steal the talent from all the best NBA players, which transform them into gigantic monsters, or monstars as they are later dubbed by a nervous Porky. This poses a real challenge to the Looney Tunes, who only picked basketball because the monstars didn't even know what it was at first.
All right. What is basketball? What's that?
So they fight fire with NBA players stealing fire by kidnapping Michael Jordan to help them win their freedom. Yeah, spoilers, they win. And they do so with the help of Jordan's assistant Stan, played by Wayne Knight, a version of Bill Murray trying to become a basketball player, played by Bill Murray, and Lola Bunny, a character who doesn't reach her full potential until later Looney Tunes projects. And, among other things, I gave you bits of history here and there, talked more about how this Nike Air movie was directed by the guy who directed the commercials it's based on, Joe Pytka, the greatest commercial director ever, and also mentioned something about Porky and Lola not being able to play basketball without their shorts. Now, part 1 of this review hasn't been out very long and hasn't gotten many views yet, if at all. So I don't think I'm responsible for this, but it does look like a lot of you are coming around to something I've known about this movie for a long time. It stinks. If you don't believe this humble reviewer, just take it from a few of your trusted sources.
Speaking of which, is it me or are the Looney Tunes just not acting like the Looney Tunes?
This kid's movie.
So also she's like this new character no one's ever met? Like no one's ever met her, but she's a toon. So where does she come from? Is there like another Toon World? Did some horny animator draw her? Where are these Looney Tunes coming from? Can they have sex?
Like, I don't even know what to say, except it just bored the crap out of me, and it's just Michael Jordan being a corporate shill, and I mean, I'd give him credit, he's really good at that.
Yeah. What's the best movie of all time?
Grease 2!
Freakazoid! Space Jam.
Hell, some of those trusted sources were so baffled by the plot, they sang about it.
Space Jam! Raise your hand if you want to hear more about Space Jam! Yes!
I'd actually really prefer it if you stopped.
The only thing I think everyone forgets when they critique this film, if one dares call this 2-hour extreme 90s commercial for sports gear a film, the one thing folks forget when they say things like, why do the Looney Tunes live in the center of the earth? And why don't people freak out about this or that? You forget that this film... sorry, I did it again. You forget that this movie exists in the world of commercials. It's a commercial movie, in so much as it was directed by a guy who was considered at the time the best commercial director. Even if you see Michael Jordan or the Looney Tunes in this universe, don't ever forget, this movie exists in the commercial world. The same place where when an animated cartoon or puppet character walks in to talk about cereal or soap, no one goes completely toys in the attic and tries to kill it, as they should. So in the context that it's a 2-hour commercial, the plot kind of makes sense. And as I said before, I think a lot of the internet critics failed to make that connection.
This movie is like someone had a mountain of fucking cocaine, and they're like, I got it, there's these aliens, right? There's these fucking aliens on this moron mountain with an amusement park.
All right, Brad. Well, it wasn't exactly like that, but a lot of us did think that when we saw the movie. I mean, what could they have been thinking? Really? The hell kind of crack were they smoking at Warner Brothers to think this would be a good movie? Like, I don't know, did they consult a higher power?
Your careers will begin to take a strange turn when a man named Jim Riswold, an advertising man, he will bring you and the Looney Tunes and Nike together, and the deal will lead to $1 million commercial that will air on the Super Bowl in 1992.
What?
Well, the guy who started this whole mess is a man named Jim Riswold. Jim brought the Looney Tunes and Nike together, and the deal led to $1 million commercial that aired on the Super Bowl in 1992. The ad was so successful that it led to more, and before long, Nike was selling shoes that looked, frankly, cartoonish. Although, I know history would say this was the beginning, but I would argue it was the end result of a much stranger cultural phenomenon that happened a year or so before those ads. The Looney Tunes had started to appear on t-shirts decked out in hip-hop gear, and the first one was Bugs and Taz dressed like Crisscross because the clothes were on backwards. These shirts started to pop up in malls everywhere in the early 90s, and I would argue that if they made any money, which, of course they did, the ad execs that made those Hair Jordan Super Bowl ads knew about it. I can just see a meeting where a bunch of ad execs go, you know, those t-shirts with the Looney Tunes dressed as rappers and looking like hood rats, they're really selling well. Yes, they like basketball in the hood, don't they?
Hey, let's see if we can get in on Nike's money. They have Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player around in the early 90s. We should get in on that.
So this movie was on wobbly ground to begin with. I mean, those ads looked bad, and they cost the studio $1 million apiece to make. I mean, how did they think they were going to turn those ads into a feature-length movie without spending anything less than a zillion simoleons? Anyway, I have broken this movie down so many different ways, but I really think, if I'm going to be honest, the real reason it's bad, because it doesn't have any understanding of who the Looney Tunes are as characters, especially Bugs. Bugs Bunny is that rare breed of comedian. He's the comic hero, so says Chuck Jones, one of the many classic Looney Tunes animation directors. Chuck points out in his book, Chuck Amuck, that a comic hero is very rare because most comedians, comedic characters, and comic actors are funny because they're losers. Rarely in life do we get a Ferris Bueller or a Peter Venkman, and often our sympathies go with the underdog characters, especially if they're funny. And most of the Looney Tunes characters are losers, but Bugs is a winner. Most of the time. I think sometimes Chuck Jones lets Bugs win without it being the result of Bugs' wit or cleverness, and sometimes it's just by default, but ultimately, Bugs is funny and the winner, which makes him a comic hero. And that's how you know this movie wasn't made by anyone who respected or even really knew the source material, because if they did, they'd know that Bugs has dealt with way worse than the stupid Monstars, and dealt with them in short order, without any help from the other Looney Tunes. Hell, he beat a whole baseball team of bad guys by his damn self. That's another thing. How many cartoons can you really think of where the Looney Tunes interact with each other? You might have Bugs interact with an adversary, or they would pair up the characters in a few different ways here and there, but ultimately, there wasn't any continuity between the cartoons. You very seldom see interaction between the characters and their worlds. Bugs Bunny doesn't share carrot pie recipes with Granny. Sam and Fudd don't get their guns and go to the shooting range together. Speedy Gonzales and the Roadrunner don't lace up their track shoes and go running together. That never happened. It It was a DePatie Freeling cartoon. It doesn't count. Anyway, my point is, the characters aren't family. They don't put down the grudges when the going get tough, and they damn sure don't have each other's backs. They're cartoon characters. And before you tell me that if they aren't family and the cartoons aren't episodic, so therefore they can't be definitive characters, let me explain how those cartoons were based solely on the Looney Tunes characters. In fact, if you're only doing a 7-minute cartoon, story does not matter. That's right. I know we live in a world now where, everybody's got their own, screenplay in their back pocket, and they all think they know how to write a script, and story's everything. And that's the problem with this movie. There wasn't enough story. Look, I defy any one of you to tell me the story of any one of those Warner Brothers cartoons. You can't do it. That's because the cartoons were not written that way. Well, technically they weren't written. There was no actual scripts. It was all storyboards, but that's a different rant for a different day. Point is, when they set out to make a Daffy Duck cartoon, they didn't go, all right, let's figure out the story. They said, let's figure out what scenario or setting to put Daffy in. And the jokes and gags will come based on Daffy's personality and how he interacts with the elements and people in that environment. And there are a million environments that you could stick these characters in that would make great movies. So the characters are self-serving, and very seldom do they interact with one another. Hell, usually they're in different parts of the country. Foghorn Leghorn and Henry Hawk are on a farm somewhere in Middle America. The Roadrunner and Coyote are in the desert. Bugs and Daffy are burrowing all across the world. Speedy's in Mexico, Pepe's in France, Porky's anywhere there's a nude beach, and Marvin Martian is on Mars. So, how is it then that they're all under the surface in this one golf course in Lake Arrowhead? And as I said before, even the threat of being zapped doesn't make any sense. Like, they zap Sam and then he's dead forever. They just killed off a timeless character. He's dead and... Oh, wait, no, there he is. Wait, that's much later in the movie. Why is he... Oh, yeah, that's right, I forgot. He's a cartoon! See? No one dies in Looney Tunes land.
Looney Tune Land!
Both Jordan and Stan the Man Newman sustain injuries that would kill them on Earth, but because they're chilling in the LTL, it's all good. So where's the f***ing threat? I'm sorry to be swearing, but Bugs is not in any danger. The Looney Tunes aren't in any danger, and this is the biggest fuck-up of all, the Monstars are cartoons themselves! Yeah!
Can you imagine anybody acting like that? I think the poor guy's screwy.
These are two separate sets of cartoon characters, and neither is a threat to the other. So why is this a movie? Why spend the money? Why degrade the characters? Why piss all over Michael Jordan's career choices? Why depict these great athletes as complete idiots without their talents? Why ruin two completely disparate sets of American treasures? To sell basketball shoes?
Cool shoes.
I mean, I'm getting hoarse, but look, I've broken down a lot of the superficial things that were wrong with this movie, and I got into detail about some of the greater wrongs that were made, as well as going into why it was based on commercials and what those commercials themselves may have been based on. None of it good. But none of that shit has a chance to be good if what it's built upon, the foundation, isn't solid. And considering that all of the characters in this movie, from the Looney Tunes to the basketball players, Bill Murray, because they're all complete carbon copies of their actual personas, this movie has nowhere good to go. It's a complete mistreatment of characters that we grew up with, and it was done with zero respect. I mean, people love to say, oh, that movie ruined my childhood. That's like a very common thing now. This movie was back in the 90s, and I guarantee you, it is the original childhood-ruining movie. And if you don't see the complete lack of respect for the Looney Tunes characters and their legacy in this movie itself, then maybe you'll see it in this story. I was very lucky to get to meet Chuck Jones before he died. I didn't get to meet him in person. A friend of mine named Sean and I got to speak to him over the phone by way of another really great friend of ours, the uber talented and zany and a cartoonist of a cartoonist, Mike Peters, who draws the newspaper comic Mother Goose and Grimm. Mike knew Chuck very well, and we're talking about Chuck, and all of a sudden, Mike just leaves the room and leaves us standing there with his wife, Marion, and all of a sudden we hear from the other side of the house, "Hey guys, come on in here!" So, obviously, we ran like the Dickens and into Mike's studio. And when we go in there, we see him, and he's cradling the phone, and he goes, "I called one of our friends." Right away. I mean, I'm getting choked up just remembering it, because right away we were like, he called Chuck. He called Chuck. And the thing about it is that we talked about a lot of things, but Space Jam, the scars of Space Jam had not yet healed at this point. This would be February of 1998, and so Space Jam, the wounds were still fresh, and so even though we wanted to ask him all sorts of things, and we did, the first question that we had to ask him was, "What did you think of Space Jam?" And before I tell you what he said, let me tell you something about Chuck that you may not know. He is a very classy man. And by that I mean that if he has something negative to say, he says it in a very classy way. When a few years earlier, I think it was 1995, I could be wrong, but he was given a Lifetime of Achievement Award at the Oscars one year. And the clip package that Robin Williams came up and said a few words and was very funny, and then they went to a clip package, and then Chuck came out. Well, in the clip package, it strongly featured a cartoon that he did with MGM after leaving Warner Brothers called The Dot and the Line. And he was not, like, the dot and the line is not, it doesn't hold up very well. And apparently Chuck had a bad time with that cartoon and was not happy with the end result. So to be told by the Academy that we're going to give you a Lifetime of Achievement Award, we love you, and then they showcase what they think, boiled down, you're all about, and it strongly features the one cartoon that you really don't like very much, kind of hurts, it's like, ugh. But of course, Chuck didn't say that because, like I said, he's classy. This is what he said.
Well, what can I say in the face of such humiliating evidence? I stand guilty before the world of directing over 300 cartoons in the last 50 or 60 years. Hopefully, this means you've forgiven me.
So things like that and stuff from his book and interviews, we were genuinely interested. Like, we didn't think he was in favor of it, but if there was any good to be gleaned from this whole thing, we were sure Mr. Jones would have the right thing to say about it. So we asked him, "Chuck, we have to know, what did you think of Space Jam?" And he said, without hesitation, "Oh, I thought it was terrible. Absolutely terrible." Which it was, and that was just, validation for us. It was just, oh, thank you. And then he said something that, I'll never forget as long as I live. He said, because remember, he's talking to me, my friend Sean, and Mike Peters, and he said, "Gentlemen, I've worked with Porky Pig for over 50 years, and I can honestly tell you, he would never say, 'I think I wet myself.'"
I wet myself.
But that's not the most egregious thing. So, Chuck Jones was asked by Warner Brothers to speak at a dinner that happened, I don't know if it was after Space Jam had come out or if it was after the Hair Jordan ads had come out, but one of those two things triggered this dinner that they were going to have with all the executives and lawyers and people on staff that were involved and they were going to have it on the animation lot, the Warner Brothers animation lot. So it was, even though, you know, the earlier cartoons weren't made there, all the cartoons post 1946 or 1948, I can't remember. I think it's 1948, but I'm not sure. But all those cartoons post that time were made at the Burbank lot, and incidentally, at the same location where they were having this dinner. And they asked Chuck to come up and give a speech and say a few words. And as we know, he's honest, but he was classy. And he said that this is not the kind of, you know, the kind of thing that they would have wanted to do back in the day and what we used to do. And the thing is, he not only didn't get to finish his speech, he didn't get to finish his dinner. Right in the middle of the speech, Warner Brothers security comes up on either shoulder and escorts him off the lot. They escort him off the same fucking lot that built the legacy that they are pissing all over. And they don't care. You know, get out of here. They disgraced a legend. Why? To sell basketball shoes.
Cool shoes.
I mean, maybe they were jealous of his simple yet effective basketball shoe design. I don't know. Chuck gave a lot of his characters these weird white sneakers that he says were pretty standard back in the day. They were, you know, a dime a dozen. Who knows? I mean, who knows? Anyway, I'm not saying that I'm against a new Space Jam movie. I just want you to be informed. Be informed. That's the thing. Be informed. If you truly love the Looney Tunes, you will see none of what you love in this or any Space Jam film because it doesn't have any respect for or any true knowledge of the original source material.
You ain't just whistling Dixie!
Anyway, I have been studying, drawing, and enjoying Warner Brothers cartoons since I was a kid. I've read several books on them, spoken to a few of the original artists that worked on the original shorts, and had multiple copies of the cartoons on tape and DVD since forever. I'm not saying that my opinion is better than yours, but it does come with a much greater acumen and knowledge of the subject matter at hand. So what I am saying is that if you still like Space Jam after everything I've just said, you are bad. Ain't you the baddest? And ain't I a stinker? I'm Trevor Thompson, the self-appointed Looney Tunes critic, and until next time, that's all, folks.
By Ferris Wheelhouse.
Ah, yes. Yes, the Sharpie is losing its fervor. Click one of those things, why don't you? I can't even afford Sharpies, decent Sharpies. Look at this. What is this? This is ridiculous is what this is. Why am I talking in an English accent? This is ridiculous how thin this is and how thick and dry this is. They have like 3 different, they come in all these different like ridiculous, it's a CD DVD marker. Oh, excuse me. Well, that makes a lot of sense to have a really pointy fine point because, you know, that doesn't f up your CDs. No. Hey, Sharpie, we're going to make a DVD marker and we're going to have it come out in 3 sizes. Fine, super fine, and dental instrument. Ugh. Crap, I broke it. Subscribe.